Hello and welcome to Claris Community Live. I'm Rosemary Tietge and I'm thrilled to be joined today by the Claris evangelists, Rick Kalman and Doug Wallis, to share everything, well, not everything, but to share the highlights of FileMaker 2026, which, if you have an active license, will land in your inbox later today. So it's great to have you all here. Please, as we get started, a couple housekeeping things. First, if you're going to send a chat, send it to everyone, not just to the panelists, because that way all the smart people from the community who are attending this live stream will be able to help answer questions. And second, if you could go to the apps icon and complete our getting started welcome Slido poll. Just let us know what version of FileMaker you're using and where you are in the world. And so with that, because we have lots to get through, I'll let Rick and Doug take it away. And while Doug starts sharing, one more thing. We'll take a few questions throughout the conversation just to keep the live stream conversational. And then we'll save time for an extended Q&A at the end. We may go a little bit past the top of the hours if we have a lot of questions. And in addition, the three of us will be joining Richard Carlton later today on his live stream. So check that out also. That's at 4 Eastern, 1 Pacific in the US, which I think translates to 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. in Europe, but maybe a European can correct me on that.
Lemons gave you a thumbs up, so you must be close.
All right. And so with that, Doug, why don't you take it away?
Cool. Thanks. Morning, everyone. Afternoon or evening. Yeah, so we're going to talk about FileMaker 26 or 2026. So today's the day when it's launching. As Rosemary was saying, is you'll get the emails with the ESD. It takes about 4 days for us to actually send the email to everyone globally. So if you don't really get today, you'll probably get tomorrow, the day after that. So first thing basically is the great geniuses within Claris have decided that having a year name and a version name was really a pain for everyone. So as of this version, FileMaker 2026 is FileMaker 26. So we're jumping from 22 to 26. That way conversation is going to be a lot easier and we're not going to have to actually pedal down on trying to figure out whether we have to say 2025 or 26. It's all 26. Those are the things we're going to go through. Rick and I will actually sort of go. I'll do some couple of demos, but actually Rick will actually give you the main, the vision behind all the themes, why we're doing them, and some of the main stuff that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. So there's a lot going on in FileMaker 2026. And so we have essentially boiled it down to 5 major themes. And so we'll walk through each of those themes. I'll give you a high level what it is. And then we'll cover a lot of the features under those themes, and then we'll point you to some additional resources to find out more afterwards. But we essentially have disaster recovery and business continuity is a theme, as well as a number of developer productivity enhancements that we were able to get into this release. Of course, the always platform stability and support is always something every release we do. We've got some stuff to announce related to accessibility with WebDirect, and then we'll end with the AI-ready architecture that we continue to bake into FileMaker. So we'll start out with the disaster recovery one, if you want to go to the next slide, Doug. And so, as you know, your FileMaker solutions are business critical, and keeping them running has now gotten simpler with FileMaker 2026. With remote backup and standby server that are available in 2026, you configure it once and Claris handles the rest. Secure, encrypted cloud backups, standby server ready to take over the moment something goes wrong. No scripts, no complexity, so less sleepless nights. And Doug will show how simple some of this stuff is as well. So
yeah. And we're going to do another community live session on the 18th where we'll go more into details on those two sort of topics. but the one thing I'm going to basically share is I'm going to share my whole screen. So I've built basically an environment where I've got two specific VMs working together. Essentially, it is a primary server and a secondary and a standby server. So standby server, the first version actually came out was on the FileMaker 14, quite a few years back. And then over the years, we've actually worked on making backups and especially progressive backups to actually work a lot better than we had in the past. So this is a new version. It works with a sort of the same idea behind it, but a much better way. So when you're actually sort of setting up under the connector, you have a specific sort of section called standby server. Once enabled from the home page, you'll have a role and then a button actually takes you directly to that environment. So the idea is basically is you have two machines working together. Can't be three, can't be four. It basically is a primary and a standby. The primary, what it does is has all the data, everything stays on there. And your secondary, which is essentially another hardware on the machine, has a complete copy of everything that is in that machine. So it will be the settings, it will be the data, pretty much everything. The one thing to be careful about is they have to be the same machine on the same OS family. So it's Mac to Mac, Windows to Windows, Linux to Linux. Essentially is the way that data blocks actually work within those different OSs. And so the thing that we do is we basically creating an SSH tunnel between the two machines, and the data blocks basically are being sent from your primary to your standby, and then gets rebuilt basically on standby. So on your standby server, if you go into the FileMaker server folder, you'll see basically on the data folder the whole sort of structure of the standby server, and there's basically all the various bit of data that we send between the primary and the standby. And every time I make a change anyway, so if I want to enable a data on my primary, I just have to click here. Automatically my standby server receives the information, sets it on. So the settings are really quick. And for the data side of it, it's using the normal sort of backup interval. So it's by default 5 minutes, but you could say to every minute if you want to.
Yeah. Hey, Doug.
If that machine goes down, you have a button over there. You click on that, switch over. It set the standby as the primary. It starts the database engine, and everything keeps on running. So the only thing manually that you have to do is if you're using a DNS for your customers, you'll have to repoint basically your DNS name to the IP address. Or if it's internal, just say to people, hey, the main server's gone down, the standby is activated, use the IP address or domain name that you have, do your stuff, data is not being lost, and then you can have whatever you want.
Yep.
It can be
Doug.
pretty much any type of file size, it doesn't really matter. The one thing we've done to make life a lot easier when you're setting up basically the machine the first time around, it's enable you to actually do a snapshot of the entire structure. So if you're using like a VM engine, you can do a snapshot, copy that, and then relaunch it. But then when you're doing quick data changes, it's just data blocks. So that's going to be really quick.
So a couple.
But again, we have this event on the 18th where we're going to basically talk a bit more about what we have there.
Yep. Just Doug, a couple questions. So first, licensing for standby server and pricing. How is that?
So standby server, so the pricing that we have, so we know that not everyone basically is going to actually need standby server. We have customers that use FileMaker Cloud. We have customers that use partners for hosting where they already have some environment in the background where they run backup standby server. We know large organizations have already the system. So it's an add-on on top of your contract, which means that you'll have to actually pay for the usage of either standby or remote desktop on your contract. So the price is the same for everyone. So standby server is $500 or in your local currency per year. And then the standby server, the remote backup starts at, to enable the service, it's $120 a year. And then for every 100 gig of data that you want in your subscription, it's $120. So $240 will give you 100 and bit more gigabyte of storage on the year. The remote backup is basically exactly what we've done for FileMaker Cloud. It is the same technology in the background. It's a snapshot environment, so it's just data blocks being moved from your main server to the FileMaker cloud. Again, there's going to be an event in 2 weeks' time. That's the go. So price is really straightforward. Standby server is $500 US. Remote backup with 100 gig is $240 a year. You can buy it as long as you've got an active contract, and it's pretty much available for 90% of our contracts. All the strange ones won't be at first, but they'll be able to actually have access afterwards.
All right. Next theme is developer productivity, or what we internally refer to as developer quality of life. And so FileMaker 2026 literally is delivering dozens of these. I think the count is a bit over 30. And these are targeted improvements to make your daily development work faster and less frustrating. From the new persistent data storage that Doug will show you in a second, to better script organization and new scripting capabilities. These aren't the flashy headline features, but they're improvements that is going to actually make your day-to-day development feel just smoother and faster. So the first one we have, and Doug will talk about, is a pretty, I think this one's a sleeper. It's the persistent data storage. Clay has often referred to this as the quadruple $sign. So Doug, you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So that one's becoming very quickly my favorite one from this launch. It's really cool because if you don't FileMaker development for a very long time, oops, sorry, I should just do share only. Not that one, just that one. Let me stop that sharing. Sorry, WebEx sometimes is just being annoying. So this is basically a basic FileMaker solution that I have, and I've got a web viewer that has some JavaScript inside it. And if you've been leveraging JavaScript in your solution for a long time, you've always had to actually find a strange way to be able to actually host it in your file. So whether you're using a table and you've created fields where you store your HTML, or whether you've actually stored it on the gray part of your canvas and have actually given it a name and actually called it, it was never in the right place. So we came up with this persistent data storage. It was a way for us to actually give you an area inside your FileMaker solution where you can actually store that type of data properly, whether it's a JavaScript library, whether it's HTML, pretty much everything that you want to have inside your system. So the way we've actually sort of done it is we've created a we have a action script set basically, which is called configure persistent data storage, and this is basically where you're going to be able to actually insert the data that you want actually stored in your system, and then there's going to be a catalog in your XML where that data is actually being stored. So it's not being stored on the layout or in a data field, it's actually stored inside the file, which means that if using the data migration tool, everything is going to stick in there and you won't actually have to actually rebuild it. So the one thing you've got to give it is basically a name, because afterwards with the you're going to call that up inside your environment. The instant ID is a way for you to be able to group types of data that you want to basically do the same stuff. So it could be your JavaScript library to do charts and stuff like that. Then you're going to be able to actually store the value. The reason I'm using actually variable is because if you type in here using the calculation engine has a limit of 30,000 characters, which might seem big, but if you're basically copying a huge amount of data from maybe you've actually asked your AI to be able to actually do more stuff around it, it's going to take a bit more space.
Hey, Doug.
And then there's a way to be able to actually, sorry,
lots of requests to zoom
in.
Hey, while he's doing that, one of the things that why I say this is a sleeper is you can imagine that this has some significant implications for agentic coding that's coming to FileMaker next. In fact, if you go tomorrow to Rich Carlton's FM Training TV, Jeremy Brown's going to do an entire session just on this one enhancement that I think will be worth watching for sure.
I think you need to change the resolution, Doug, because Zoom doesn't
Yeah, it
comes
does not
through
do it.
on WebEx.
Give me 2 seconds. Display. Go with this. Any better?
Yeah, and while Doug is doing that, I don't know, Rick, if you can answer, will persistent storage work if the client is FileMaker 2026, but server is FileMaker 2025?
It
That is
has to be
a
on the same.
good
It has
question.
to be on 26. Yeah, it's not a feature that actually will be working with previous version. So it has to be on the 26 because there's no data storage in 25, so it won't be able to actually find the information in there. And then once you have that, then you can actually go into your layout, and then in Web Viewer, all you have to do is basically use the get persistent data, give it use the name, the ID of the instance, and then it's basically going to be able to actually call it up. The one thing which is really cool is because it's available from the catalog, it's easy for you to be able to extract it and easy for you to actually give it to a model in the AI. And then you would be able to actually say, hey, this is my HTML page to actually do this type of information. How about you actually sort of give me that information into a different format? You can re-inject that basically into the code and actually sort of change it really quickly. So if I were to actually, so I've got a bit of a file. So basically is I've got two versions of my HTML. So this is the normal pie chart. I want to do a donut. So all I had to actually do was actually put this in the previous information inside of Claude. Then it gives me another bit of HTML. I can store it in there, click on Browse, save it, and then rerun my script. And then I've got my new sort of information set up. So it's actually really easy to be able to actually sort of change stuff from the outside. So the more stuff you do with AI, where you want to extract part of the information that is stored in the right place, where you can actually get really easily, you know there's only one place to be able to restore it. So that will actually sort of save it. It doesn't change the file format, still works with FMP12. It's just we've added this basically extra layer of where we can actually store data inside the FileMaker. So play around with it. This is going to be kind of a really nice one to actually sort of share over the time. Let's go back to Keynote. Adaptive Inspector again. So we've started working on this on the Mac only, so not on Windows, but on the Mac back in 22. And the idea is that the inspector that we have is so if you've been using it for a very long time, you're actually used to it. You know how to actually move through the tabs at the top. So you've got 4 tabs. You know your way around it. The problem is as soon as we actually give that to new users, they're like, why have you got so many tabs? Why is it really hard to be able to actually sort of do stuff in? So the idea was to actually be able to actually do an adaptive inspector. So depending on the object you're actually looking at or the part, whatever, your inspector will actually readjust so that everything that you can actually do in most cases will be available. And if you have a feature that doesn't work for that type of object, then it goes away. We know we have people that actually hate it, and we know we have people that actually love it. So the idea is we want to please everyone. So what we have in this version is by default, the adaptive inspector is actually set on. You can create, if you go to the view, you can actually create a new inspector. So you'll have the old format. And then in the first V release of 26, so 26.0.2, which is going to come very shortly, you'll have the options in settings to decide which one you want to have by default. So you could have the adaptive, or you could have the old way. So we're basically trying to please pretty much anyone on the planet with a tiny tick box. So hopefully that will make your life a lot easier. If you hate it, that's cool. In other cases, just trying to actually play around with it, and feedback is useful. Like we know we have issue with shortcuts. There's a couple of stuff being a pain. So again, the more feedback that we have, the better we're going to be able to actually make it for everyone. Control field entry by calculation. That's one of the things that, like I was thinking this morning, it's type of stuff that Richard Carlton and some will go completely mental. And we did it because we had like, it was, so we have, Rick and I have had this very long list of feature from developers for, I know, 30 years of if you could fix this, it would just be so nice. And this is one of them. And when we actually did the work, it was one thing that I was like, yeah, cool, but do we really sort of need to actually sort of fix that? And when I was actually playing with it, it's like, wow, if I hadn't been working for Claris, I would have asked for a long time to actually have that fixed. So let me just share again my FileMaker. So that go all the way, and oops, and let's use this one. So this is FileMaker 26. The bottom of the page, you can see I've got notes. If I in 25, one of the things which is really annoying is, let's say you have a field where you can't see all the data, and you want someone to be able to view all the data inside that field, but you don't want them to actually modify it. There's nothing in 22 and before that was easy to do. You had to always figure out a way around it. So if I go basically into layout mode, and I click on that with the new model, if I go onto data, we've actually created a calculation mode around the field entry behavior. So you're basically enabled to actually in browse mode, define mode, allowed to actually say, hey, if I'm actually in browse mode, I'm allowed to actually select it and view it. Otherwise, if you can find mode, you can actually sort of type inside it. So it's only for 26 and above. So if you have someone on 25, they won't be able to actually have that. But now I can actually just click on the box and actually can scroll up and down that field, but I can't actually modify it. So I'm actually blocking any field modification, but I can actually view everything in that environment. Okay. So, and when I was doing the demo, playing around, it might be of a problem that I had, I think, like 25 years ago, which was driving me mad. So I had to find ways around it. So that is that's kind of a cool one. Next one on the list. That again is a small one, but basically we have a lot of people using custom functions with folders. In the previous version, you can actually sort properly. Now you can actually do the whole sorting of custom functions within that folder, so everything actually works a lot nicer than before. Set loud zoom by calculation around one of those sort of really sort of like why wasn't there years ago. So essentially is you'll be able to actually zoom or control the zoom by calculation between the value of 0 and 400, and you can go one by one if you want to. So you can create a script and you can actually control. So before it was from 25 to 25%. Now it's going to be one by one or whatever value. If you want it to be really, really tiny layout zoom, you can use that. The PDF script workspace. So AI is going to run our life, but we still need to actually be able to create PDF because we still need to be able to actually send invoices, quotes to whatever to our customers. One other thing that was a bit of a pain with the PDF was around appending data to a PDF. And so we were working around of what's the best way of actually sort of doing it. And then a few years back, we had created the script steps to manage data files. So you can create a data file, open a data file, create it, be able to know exactly where it ends, where you can actually insert the data. And we've done the same stuff for the PDF. So there's going to be 6 different type of action script steps that allow you to open a PDF, print to it, store the data inside it, call it up, append, pretty much everything you can do with a data file. So it's actually making your life a lot easier. There's no plugging required. And especially if you have like very large PDFs and you want to be able to append to a specific area, you'll be able to actually do it in a very nice and easy way. This is the whole list. Rick took a huge amount of time to actually create this, and I think he just took the best one. There's a lot of stuff around it. One other thing which is really cool is this one at the top, inside FileMaker, caching JSON result. So for those who've actually used a lot of JSON, the way we store data inside the FileMaker is like a text file, and then we decode it sort of to be a JSON, and then we re-encode it. So when using JSON in a long script, it's actually calling basically the text, transforming it to JSON, validating it, and putting it back. what we've done now is basically it's automatically being cached as a JSON result. So when you're calling the cache, the JSON value, quite a few times, it doesn't have to actually do anything in the background. So it's going to be a lot quicker in some of the stuff.
I think another good sleeper here, Doug, is the WebP container support. So if you've got a lot of containers with JPEGs or GIFs in them, this can significantly reduce the footprint,
Yeah.
speeding up solutions, backups, and so on. So that's another sleeper.
That one is a look on. There's a few stuff on WebViewer. I think we'll talk about few, but basically like flushing the cookies on WebViewer. If you have people using a lot of WebViewer, especially on WebDirect, you can actually control that a bit more. So there's a whole list. As everything is on the release notes, you can actually sort of go through that and some great stuff around that.
All right. So the next theme
right.
is, oh, you got a question, Rosemary?
Yeah, there's a couple.
Okay.
So I think I'm only going to ask one of them since we have a lot. So for the file, edit, select, view, like scroll in file, is that behavior also supported in WebDirect?
Oh yeah.
All right.
Oh yeah. Everything that we
Yeah.
do is across the board. So it's ProGo and WebDirect. Unless we specific mention that it's like a macOS value, like the adaptive inspector, everything else is the same across the board.
Okay. There's a lot of joy about, oh, this is going to let me literally remove hundreds of custom functions and roll over, unhover, tooltip type things. So.
Yep. Like as I like to used to say, it's the little things that make all the difference, right? So just trying to smooth out your frustrations with why is this way. So now the next theme is stability, scalability, and platform support. So FileMaker 2026 runs better, it recovers faster, and it stays current with platforms that your organization is depending upon. So, and we'll talk about this in a second. Now, our services automatically restart after a crash, so it doesn't require human intervention to bring the things like custom web publishing or OData or data API if they go down. So high volume deployments get improved script engine throughput, and there's full support, of course, for Mac OS 26 and Windows Server 2025, so that you're definitely on solid ground with this platform. So Doug, you want to go into some of the details?
Yeah. So this one is, again, it was a big request from a lot of users of if I'm using basically the system script engine, so running script through FileMaker server through the schedule, you can actually run one. So you could actually have multiple sort of script one after the other. So in memory says about 25. The problem is basically people saying, well, I need to actually have more of them actually be able to actually run in parallel because I'm doing a lot more stuff on the server side. And again, with AI, a lot more stuff will actually be done on the server because whether it's automation, version controlling that you create yourself, everything will actually, a lot of more stuff will be done on the server. So we've actually been able to increase the amount of SaaS that you can run. The way that basically it's kind of control is you would need a so the hardware basically is it's going to use uh, some RAM to actually have the SAS process running, and it's going to use a couple of CPUs. So when you actually start it up under your admin console, there's going to be a section where you'll be able to actually specify how many processes you're going to have. So it will be a value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, could be more. But basically that value is calculated based on the power of your machine and the amount of RAM that it has and stuff like that. So it's not per se that if you have like a Mac Studio with a huge amount of RAM, it's going to give you the most amount. It's based on the amount of RAM and CPUs it can really use to be able to actually do that properly. So on average, if you have a very powerful machine, you'll be able to actually have 3 or 4 different SAS processes actually running at the same time. They all kind of live in the same world, so the processor behind it is kind of the same one, but they can work on in parallel. So if you have actually one crashing, the others will actually stop. But like Rick was saying, we have this auto refresh, auto restart in the background, so they're going to restart in a cleaner way, in a better way. So to restart, we've actually put that for web publishing engine, OData, data API, kind of different places. And the idea is that if it crashes, it just restarts. It just restarts on its own. So the idea is that if it goes down, you don't actually have to get the admin of the admin console to actually check why it's gone down. It's going to restart. People don't actually see it, but everything is actually logged. So on a daily basis, you could actually send a log out to an AI and ask it, hey, why is it crashing down? What happened and stuff like that. So that's a really nice, cool way to be able to
Yeah,
actually
and
do that.
as we enter more and more into the era of agentic coding, where there's a lot of dependencies on these services, before required someone to notice it, go tell someone, and then restart it. Now it just repairs, but it still logs that there's an issue. You can go and look at it, but it'll stay up. So that will essentially be essential in the agentic development era of FileMaker.
And it's working on our long-term vision of, like, again, FileMaker server has to be up and running pretty much all the time because everything around it. And on top of it, we know that in the future, there's going to be changes like SSL certificate. Currently, you can get away with not actually refreshing it more than once a year. But in the future, it's going to be, you have to actually refresh your certificate, whether it's Lens Encrypt or paid one, every 90 days, every 60 days, every 30 days. Potentially in the future, when AI gets to be too clever, you'll have to refresh your certificate every day. And in order to be able to do that, you can't stop your FileMaker server every day. So we're building the system in the background so that everything can actually keep on running while services in the background can actually restart. So that's some of the stuff that we're actually doing for the future. Again, a quick one, exporting field content on server. That was something that was a big pain for a lot of people. They had to find ways around it. No more workaround. It basically does what it says. You can export field content directly on the server, use them, and do whatever you want with it in the future. There's a couple of enhancements in FileMaker Go. Essentially is kind of a small issues. There was some stuff that we had to fix on the calendar for the Japanese market. A couple of stuff in the background, but pretty much all of it is just getting the new features in 26 to actually work properly in that. I just saw a question about Android. There won't be an Android version of FileMaker Go. Essentially is we are investing a lot more in WebDirect in order for you to be able to leverage WebDirect on an Android device if you really have to, versus trying to figure out how we're going to create a FileMaker Go on Android that's going to have the same experience you have on an iPhone versus thousands of different variations of Android that we can't really manage and really can't really control. A couple of stuff that's really important. So Windows Server 2025 will be supported with Windows servers, which means we're dropping Windows 2019. So we have the current version and the one before that. Mac OS and Tower 26 and Sequoia are supported. I know that Golden Gate came out yesterday, but it was a developer beta. So, but once the full version comes out, we'll actually be supporting that as well at the full time. The other thing that we've done is in terms of updating, there's a lot of vulnerabilities on some of the main third-party tools that people use globally, whether it's OpenSSL, whether it's Tomcat, whether it's Node.js and stuff like that. So we really try actually to keep the level of updating those third-party tools inside of FileMaker as quickly as we can. So we can't be updating the day after an update comes. We have to test it, we have to repackage it, we have to rebuild it. But we're creating basic environment where we make it a lot easier. One other thing that we've done with the FileMaker server install is we're giving you a few more options now. So in the previous versions, you can install a primary or secondary server, essentially just web publishing engine. Now we give you two more options. So you can be a primary, secondary. You can install just the Claris AI model server. So none of the database services will be running, or you can just install the developer tools directly from the FileMaker server install. So you don't need to actually go and find it on community. It will be within your FileMaker server install that is part of your contract. And then when you install in basically the AI model server on a specific machine, there is a section where we allow you to be able to do an update of the third-party tools that we use inside the model without updating the whole of the installer. Essentially stuff like Python, stuff like the Minifold that we use. Those get updated based at a different rhythm that we will actually sort of release FileMaker server updates. And so we're building basically a mechanism in the background in order to be able to actually do updates of part of the software in FileMaker server without everyone having to actually reinstall everything. So that's one of the things that is being planned. It's been kind of worked on. It takes a bit of time for us to be able to actually sort of package it properly, but that's kind of the idea that we have for the long term.
All right, so next theme is user experience and accessibility. And so FileMaker 2026 has taken a really meaningful step forward towards accessibility compliance with WebDirect. So if you have end users with that depend on screen readers to interact with software, if you're a governmental agency and nonprofit taking funds, there may be requirements for accommodation. So we've made some pretty significant progress here making it usable. There's improved screen reading support, semantic HTML improvements, and this just gets turned on in the admin console. There's nothing you have to do for your deployed solutions in order for this to take place. So you want to jump in,
Yep.
Doug?
So the WebDirect accessibility. So yeah, so like we were saying, government, there's federal, basically the US, but it's basically a global settings. So you have for Europe, for pretty much everywhere on the planet. And so what we did is we had to actually rework on the background of WebDirect in order for actually everything to actually sort of work properly. The easiest way for you, in most cases, is to actually figure out when you've actually installed, or you could actually do it now and actually see sort of afterwards. So let me just share my content. So this is my WebDirect page. It's running 26, and I've got this solution called Performance Semantic Search. I'm just going to log in. So in order to figure out whether your solution will actually be validated around what they call the WCAG compliance. So there's different level. The one we're basically going for is like a 2.1, which is basically the entry level. There's a various ways of actually doing it. So there's the on the W3org website, there's a whole list of websites that actually can tell you what's done properly, what doesn't work. Within Chrome, I actually did find an extension, so a lot easier for actually demo, which is called the Wave Evolution tool. So Wave is one of the sort of third party that actually creates that environment. And all you have to actually sort of do is actually have it installed, and it's going to give you all the potential non-compliant systems. So if you're running that version on 25, you're going to have, I think, about 10 errors, which are basically very problematic issues. With 26, pretty much everything's gone. I think the alert is because I didn't actually specify a name under the image in here, but in a lot of cases, you will actually get a score and it will tell you everything actually works. The important stuff is around areas. If you get asked about your interface and how it works and stuff like that, you can just print this out to your customer saying, hey, it's got complete validation. It will actually work properly with accessibility keyboards. There is just one settings on your admin console to enable that. So it's on the WebDirect. You'll see it's called adaptive screen. I can't remember the name. You just activate that and you'll be up and running in no time. I hate when WebEx does update. It breaks everything. So again, WebDirect, we've been working heavily on that. We did a user story not long ago about a company that actually rents yachts globally. So it's a big company that, like, number one in the planet, renting sort of very expensive yachts, and a lot of the stuff they have is actually based on WebDirect. And they had this issue of flickering and annoying thing within FileMaker. So we got the QA team and engineers to work together on going is how can we fix this very sort of small behavior within WebDirect to make everyone's life a lot easier, and they've been able to actually sort of get there. So it's a lot better now.
All right, Doug, before you go on, can you drop the accessibility tool you used into chat, please?
If I yeah, let me see if I can find
All right,
Uh,
well, while he's doing that, I'm going to introduce the AI-ready architecture sections, our last theme to cover. If you've been paying attention, you'll know that at the beginning of May, Ryan McCann posted a blog about what's coming next to FileMaker in the sense of agentic development or agentic coding. We followed it up at the end of May with a Claris live event where we demoed some of what Ryan was talking about. And as you're aware, more than likely, we did a number of things in FileMaker 2025 to add AI capabilities inside the solutions you build, and adding a number of AI-related script steps and calculations, the AI model server for hosting your own models if you don't want to send your data up to the cloud, and so on. So in FileMaker 2026, we continue to build a foundation that makes your solution smarter, whether you're integrating AI today or getting ready for the agentic development with FileMaker that's coming tomorrow. We've added Google Gemini support, and there's new tools to give AI models context about your schema, so less hallucinations, if you will. The more it knows about the intent of the data, the intent of the fields, the more accurate it can be. So we're making sure that FileMaker is ready when you are, and for the agentic development era that's now upon us all. If you're in software, you know that AI is influencing anything. So FileMaker 2026 is also a fantastic foundation release for what is coming as a fast follow. So Doug, you want to go into some of the things that we did?
So we've got support for Google Gemini out of the box. So when you're creating your configure AI account, Gemini will be coming up, and so you can actually use that. And we'll have on our tech specs the different model that we support from Google Gemini. We've made some nice improvement to the RAG as well, so that it can handle better multilingual sort of context, and especially that scan PDF. So again, we've actually been working on that. So we know there's a lot of times where people actually have PDF that's been scanned from different sort of devices. And so we want to be able to actually get people to be able to actually use that. Before I move that, I'm just going to basically quickly go into and share and show you the admin console to kind of quickly talk about around this AI services. So like I was saying, basically in the FileMaker install, you have different options. You can use primary, secondary, you can have just the AI server, and you can use the developer tools. But if you're installing FileMaker server, you'll be able to actually have AI services working on the same device. In most cases, you'll need two devices, one for databases and then one for AI services. But because I've got a very powerful Mac Studio, I can actually run both on my machine, and it kind of actually works nicely. But it's a nice way to be able to actually sort of show you. A couple of things that we've actually sort of done to make everyone's life easier. Like I was mentioning before, we basically giving control over dependencies in Python. So this is where you'll be able to actually find them, because we want to make sure that your AI server is going to essentially maybe evolve and get updated at a quicker rate than your FileMaker server. Hence the reason having two different systems to actually use them. On the homepage, it will tell you basically how much gigabytes, so basically the hardware that you have, and so you can actually work with that. One of the things that we've actually sort of done, and again, it's because there's a lot of people running AI services with this, is similar to when you have your WebDirect running, is there needs to be a password to the system. One of the things that we did see is we can see there's a lot of AI server on 25 running that have no key. So anyone can actually send information and use your server to be able to send test. So in the settings, what we've done is we are by default requiring API key to be used when you're actually exchanging data between FileMaker and your server. And if you disable it, we've basically putting warnings everywhere. Kind of, this is not what you should be doing. And there's a few places where you're going to be able to actually sort of see that. So if I enable that, it goes away. Again, same for the long prompts and responses. That's only basically for testing. Don't use that for production, because it's going to really slow down your system, because it has to actually log a lot of information in the background. So we made sure that we have this information. The whole thing about the RAG basically is we give you a bit more options in order for you to be able to create and control a bit more how you want the RAG environment to actually sort of work. And RAG essentially is putting a lot of information, storing into next to your model so that the two can actually work together. So if you're having a huge amount of PDFs around contracts with your customers, or you want to store a huge amount of information about the company, that is where RAG is really useful. If you don't want to create an MCP server to some other environment, but actually have everything stored inside your FileMaker solutions, you can do that. And the other thing is on top of it, you'll be able to actually import the RAG spaces from different machines. So you could have a create environment for a specific amount of time where it's going to do all the work to be able to actually generate the RAG and then put that into a specific machine just for querying it. So you could use different machines for different purposes. Models basically is so you can use embedding models, so both text and images. The reason we actually mixed it is we have added a new type which is called image captioning. Essentially, it's you send an image to the model and it's going to tell you what's inside the image. It's going to give you a description of the image. If you're sending it like a picture of a famous painter or a photo of someone famous, it can even give you the name of the painting or the photo, and it's actually kind of clever. We're using a blip model made by Salesforce. It's kind of big. It's roughly about 34 gig. So when you're sending the image, it will take roughly about a second to do 20 images. But you just want to make sure that you have the right sort of machine. On top of that, you can use pretty much any of the text generation engine. And when you're downloading it, when you want to add a new model, it will tell you whether your machine is going to be able to actually run it. So if it says it can't do it, then there's no point in actually downloading it. The other thing that we've done is we are allowing people to be able to actually have more than one model at the same time running on the machine. If it's embedding, you're fine because a text embedding model is less than half a gig, so you'll be fine. Text generation, if you're looking to actually have different text generation model running on the same server for different purposes, make sure you have enough RAM, otherwise they're going to basically eat up a lot of stuff. Again, you'll need a Hugging Face key in order to actually be able to download that. Hugging Face manages the legal requirements and the ULAs between model sort of creators and the rest of the market. So that's the nicest way to be able to actually control that. There's still stuff on fine tuning. This is basically only for the Mac. There is a request, so you'll be able to actually see all the requests sent. We don't actually, in that area, track all the prompts and the replies. We basically just logging the user IP address, which endpoint the request was targeting, and then the code to actually give you more information. And the last one that we've basically created is a small chat interface where essentially you can nicely talk to your RAG. So it's a V1. You can decide which text generation model you want to use, and you can enable RAG. You put the IP key and the space name, and then you can actually start questioning your RAG environment without having to actually change to anything out there. So currently we put it in the server. We'll see in the future whether we create an add-on so that you can actually leverage that directly from your environment. Let me go back to the keynote.
All right, before you do that, there's
Yeah.
lots of people asking what is the RAM overhead to run an AI model server?
So basically you take any model, you take the size and times 2. So if you're running I would say like a Google Gemma 3 7B, which is about 24 gig, you're going to need 48 big as the whole place for your whole machine. Because the thing is, a model doesn't really, it's like an annoying, stubborn little kid. It doesn't care how much space or what it needs to take. It's just going to grab everything that it can. So that's why you basically just multiply by 2 and you'll be fine with it.
And
So
just
why is
just FYI, there's a lot of models out there on Hugging Face. A lot of people are experimenting with, what's the ideal model. If a model is smaller and does what it is you're trying to do, then you can go with that. So there's a lot of sort of experimentation and tuning to find out which model will deliver to you what you're expecting.
Yeah, I mean, in the future we will see, and even if you look at what a lot of companies are actually talking about is is moving away from really having like LLMs, so models that actually do everything. The future is SLM, so small language model, and then VLM, vision language model. Basically, the idea is you have model that actually do one specific thing for you at any one time. Hence the reason why you have text embedding and then you have image embedding. You basically use it for what the real purpose it's all about. So again, if you don't actually need a multilingual model, then you can find models that actually have the language sort of support being removed, and that's going to take a huge amount of stuff aside it. So again, Hugging Space has a lot of it has like what 2.5 million models nowadays. You can scroll through it, and it's an idea to be able to actually leverage that. Pretty much anything that is on Hugging Face will actually run through FileMaker AI model. So if you want to use Qwen, DeepSeek, pretty much everything is going to work. There's a few tiny ones, especially on the newer ones, where the response sometimes gives you a bit more information. So it will work. It's just when you get the JSON payload back, you're going to have to actually figure out where the data that you're looking for is actually stored in. But you can actually use pretty much everything that's out there.
Doug, just a point, we have about 10 more minutes, so just FYI.
Yeah. So another cool one. So let me just dive in straight away into. Sorry, I'll put this one up. Stop sharing and then share. Oops.
And well, Doug is sharing this question about AI model server availability on FileMaker Cloud. Is that
No, it's not on FileMaker Cloud. FileMaker Cloud is a database server. So like I was saying before, a database server and an AI server shouldn't be basically running on the same machine. They use different things. So if we won't actually have AI model running on FileMaker Cloud, but if we do one, it will be a very specific sort of systems on the side. So field annotation, that is another really quick one. So we all have been creating solutions for a very long time, and we all have very personal naming conventions. So FileMaker lets you basically give any type of name to a field name, and same to a table. You can call it whatever you wanted to call it. The problem is when you send that to a model, it has no idea what's actually in your head. It doesn't know why you've actually called it that way. It doesn't understand your spelling and stuff like that. So what we did basically is we've added a couple of options in order for you to be able to create information for the model, in order for the model to actually understand what it can do with it. So the field annotation essentially is a free text file, a field where you can actually describe what is actually in that field. So it's part of the DDL, yeah, the data definition language, which will basically be sent out when you're doing performing fine with natural language, or when you're actually sort of talking to a model to actually have a look at your layouts to be able to do, hey, I've got this layout, can you create me another layout and stuff like that. So it needs to understand everything around that. So really useful to be able to not have to redesign your tables and your fields and your relation, just basically be able to actually add a bit of text in some places in your environment in order to be able to leverage AI as quickly as possible. Second one, really cool as well, it's called field display name. So essentially is a way for you to use JSON in order for you to give the field names, depending on where you're using it, a different name. So if you've been doing Excel export and your naming convention in your solution is, what's the word that I normally use? Strange, quirky, very personal. The headers are what is actually stored inside your FileMaker solution. So either you find a way to automatically update them through the XML, or you have to actually rename them. With this feature, you're going to be able to actually specifically say, this is what this field is going to be called. So in that case, I've got primary key, and I couldn't call it, this is the primary key, and this is the value that is going to be exported with your JSON or your CSV file without you having to actually sort of do anything else. Same for table view. If you're creating table view and then sometimes you're having fields coming from another table, you know you have a very long name where it basically has the table occurrence and then the field name, you can use table view, and so only that table view will actually be used. But you can create as many key value pairs that you want. So if you want to use this to be able to actually create multilingual layouts, you can actually sort of do that. And then there is a function that then calls this data, and then you can use that using layer calculation. So if you want to do a multilingual environment with a nice and easy way to store the data in the right place, this is the way forward for you.
So this feature helps AI, but it is also AKA friendly field names. I've been hearing that request for a long time, and it is here.
Yeah. So it's, and then in terms of the JSON, is you can have as many as you want. So if you want a layout that has translation for 50 languages, then it's been used. The evaluation of it is only when it's being showed on the screen. So if you're not actually showing it anywhere on your layout, it's not going to be evaluated. It's just basically when it has to actually show it on the layout.
And the other question that came through here is, does this mean that I can have friendly column headers when I export to Excel and CSV?
Yeah, that's exactly that.
Yep.
Is where you put it in. Yeah. So just make sure your spelling is actually done properly there, because that's what people will actually sort of see.
5 more minutes, Doug, and there's some good ones left. So
Okay. Sorry. Base table command line, basically, again, it's a way for you to be able to explain is what is in your table. So you can really specifically go commenting about it, and then you can reuse that in your script to be able to say, hey, I want to figure out, or this information that is stored in a table, I want to be able to actually sort of control it. Very useful as well. That is, again, a lot of the thing that we're working is, so we're doing a lot of improvements within the way we sort of use SQL inside the FileMaker, because LLMs are very nicely trained on SQL. They can do a lot of queries around it. And there's a couple of features inside the FileMaker that were actually working. Like the foreign key sort of syntax wasn't really there. So we've made a lot of improvements. We're trying to actually get a lot quicker. So we've done updates to the engine that we use called Antler, so that all of that will actually go and work a lot quicker. And the idea is to be able to actually remove some of the translation layer that we have in the background when you're talking to AI generated. So that's going to basically help you, in a lot of cases, getting your system to actually talk to models when you want to do performing natural language queries. That one is really cool as well. So let me just jump in directly in FileMaker. So when you have a solution and you want to basically see everything inside it, we have an option called Save a Copy as XML. In the previous version, you just click on that. It'll give you 2 options, whether you want to include the analysis tools. So we've actually used what we had in the DDR from the past and actually build it for the Save a Copy as XML. So you can select different files. So you can say, I just want to basically have one file being exported. You can select if you want to have all the chunk of the analysis tool. So it tells you everything about how the scripts are being created and all of that. And then you can control all the different catalogs that we have. So we pretty much have all the catalogs. There's a few that we'll be adding, but it's a nice way for you to be able to create your version controlling environment. There is a script step that allow you to be able to run that whenever it needs to be run. And again, within the Save a Copies XML, there is a JSON option. I know it's not written in the best way, but it allows you to be able to control the catalog you want to export. And so if you're using a lot of the persistent data storage and you want to basically export that to a model to be able to go is, I've got this HTML page that I created, uses this JavaScript, I need to modify it. You can send a bit of information, put it back into your persistent data storage, and have your layout working really nicely in the future. And then you control all of that as much as you want. And when you export that, you can export that directly on your desktop and actually sort of do stuff with it. So what we did on top of it is we created within the FM upgrade tool a way to be able to generate a FileMaker solution directly from an XML. So it's part of the work around AI. If you actually have a solution in XML that has basic some stuff and you want to send that across to Claude, Codex, whatever, and go, hey, could you create another table in your fields? Models will be able to actually do that. It's going to return an XML, and then you're going to be able to actually generate a file directly from the system. So a lot of the work that we've talked about, where we're going to use and have within FileMaker ways to be able to leverage models to create layouts, all of that, pretty much everything is actually, a lot of it is actually based on that part of the XML and then the FML snippets that we actually have in the system.
And the good thing
Alright.
about being able to control the down to the catalog level is it's a lot less XML to have to parse, especially if you're paying for tokens. So it's very surgical in that way.
Yes,
So like
so
you're saying,
at the top of
so
the hour, I'm just going to stop you for a second and let people know we will be joining the FM Training TV, and thank you, Margaret, for dropping in the link in a few hours, so 4 hours from now. So join us there for more questions. A lot of what I've seen go through in chat is feature requests or questions about very specific bug fixes, and to be honest, we can't help you with that. I will make sure that feature requests get to the right people on the product team. For issue fixes and things, check the release notes. I just checked, they're not updated yet, but they should be in a few minutes. And we'll hang out for another 15 or 20 minutes, but if you have to leave, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next Thursday.
And let me just add on to that, Rosemary, that definitely look at the release notes. There are well over 100 things that we did to enhance FileMaker 2026. So we barely scratched the surface, and that's not including the customer-facing bug fixes as well. So there's a lot going on in this release. We think it's a solid foundation for what's coming next as well. So
actually, yeah, the release notes actually up on the website, so you can go and check them out.
Oh, and you should begin to start seeing with our help and our topics that MD files are available for all the stuff going forward. So AI will really appreciate that. You can point it to the definitive documentation from Claris about what a script or a calc does straight from our documentation team.
I'll just put the link to the page you're referring to in the chat if people want to actually check it out. It's a very long list of everything that we have inside the FileMaker help guide with MD files, and it's in 11 languages. So don't read it, just grab it, store it somewhere.
Yeah, and Doug, you just sent that to panelists only, so I'm sending it to everyone.
Oh yeah, sorry. Well,
Thanks,
my screen is zoomed in massively, so I'm not used to that.
All right. So one question, will updates to third-party components like Node.js and Tomcat be released for the other supported versions of FileMaker Server?
No, it would just be for the future releases, 26 and onwards.
Yeah.
And again, it will be so again, like on the AI servers, when we have the dependencies, the Python file and the dependencies are actually being loaded from our servers. So they're not the copy that you actually get from the main repository. They're actually versions that we at Claris have compiled, actually does work for our product properly. So it's not about grabbing it, but it's enabled us to be able to actually update it quicker if there's an issue. So we're doing it with Python for now because AI is moving really, really quickly. And then we'll do that for the sort of part of the engine in the future.
All right. Their questions were coming fast and furious, and I'm not sure how many were here that we can actually answer. But so for save as XML, just to confirm, XML export does support the reverse path now to feed things back into.
Yeah, use solution upgrade tool and the patch capability to be able to infuse. So it's a bidirectional serialization, deserialization of a FileMaker file into XML. And so let your imagination begin to carry out what happens when AI gets after that. But it is a foundational piece of where we're heading. And Doug, that question earlier about the things like Tomcat, the different updates, there are times that we will go back to the supported previous server to do those kinds of updates when it's appropriate. So because we support previous ones as well. So it's always depends upon what it is. The latest and greatest is always going to be our current platform.
Yeah. So depending on the like Node.js is the bigger one because it's used pretty much everything anywhere on the planet. And if you look at the CVE library, it's like every day there's like 4 or 5 new ones. If the vulnerability is really high, then we'll do it for the current version and one before that. If it's working with what we have in FileMaker server. So if for whatever reason we have to do a lot of changes and it's going to break code in the previous version, then we won't be doing it completely. We might sort of patch some stuff, but in other cases we'll basically advise people to move to the latest version.
Other questions, Rosemary?
I'm just responding to something else.
Okay.
Let's see. Is the admin console AI chat feature isolated to RAG, or is it given access to your server configuration? I think that's just data, right? It's not.
AI can talk to the RAG. Unless you give it access to the file, so you would actually have to tell it, hey, connect to my FileMaker server with this IP address and using a data, and this is my username and password. Then we'll be able to actually sort of talk to it and stuff like that. But essentially, yeah, it's more for the RAG and yeah. But you can, yeah. Nowadays, I mean, you can build a no data client in Claude in 5 minutes and talk to your data. So.
Yeah, and no changes to the debugger, correct?
Nope.
Okay. As I'm going backwards, is there a future for the HTML database design report?
Oof. Well, maybe we could potentially have. Actually, no, because the thing is, if you want to use it, it depends what you want to use it. But if you're going to use it with AI, you just have to actually give it the XML and say, "Hey, translate that into HTML." It's going to do it in 25 seconds, and then you can get it to actually do whatever you want on top of it. So, it's not something we'll be able to. It's not something we're going to work on in the near future.
Yeah, and I would also add that base elements is now not base elements. Inspector Pro is now free if you're worried about the cost of the analysis tools. Can you upgrade directly to server 2026 from 2024?
From 21, yeah, you can upgrade. So anything from 17 all the way to 22 can move directly to 26. It's the same package, so you'll be able to do all of that.
But I will say, based on like community experience and my conversations with developers, it is often safer to follow the uninstall, rename your FileMaker server folder, and then install. That is a more reliable update path, especially if you're doing OS updates or anything else in the process.
Yeah.
You can try the in-place upgrade, but be prepared for it to not work and for you have to do the uninstall reinstall.
Well, that's if you're doing basically on an on-premise server in your office or in your data center. In most cases, if you're using stuff like Azure or AWS, it's cheaper actually in most cases to actually move to a brand new machines because price is actually going down for old generation, and then you do a fresh install. You can basically grab pretty much everything from FileMaker's sort of system, like saving the schedule and stuff like that. Reopen your files and actually start from scratch. In a lot of cases, it's a safer way.
Yes. And there were a lot of questions that came through about pasting scripts from AI into the script workspace. There's Do you want to answer that, Rick?
So, but the thing, so directly is you would need a plugin. So I know there's one called Clip Manager that does that. There's Base Element. There's various around stuff that we're doing. But for those who've actually seen the webinar with Viliano and Martha, some of the stuff that's actually showing is it's pretty much that is you using Claude or Codex, and then it's going to basically give you a what we call the FM XML snippet, which is basically a bit of FileMaker code in XML, and you just copy that. Basically, you'll paste that into your environment. So it could be a layout, it can be a table, it can be fields, it can be scripts, it can be custom functions, it can be pretty much whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, there's a number of XML formats, and copy and paste is one of the weak links currently of people that are doing things with AI. We will take care of that in the next round of as we go into agentic coding, so that you don't, because there's only some things that only Claris can work around, and we are collecting those things, because what you really want is this very smooth iterative experience. You don't want to get something down, work on it, paste it, look at it. You just want to continue like that. So we have been collecting all those. We have been watching this space very closely. There are things that are limitations of some of the techniques people have come up with some, especially in ETS. I would encourage you to go over to the Code and Full City blogs on some of the things that they are being able to do. And if you look at the limitations, or if you look at something like ProofKit and see some of the limitations that they can't get beyond, that's where we come in. That's where we'll remove those and smooth them out to make this a better and better experience, so that you can use these tools.
Have there been any updates, I guess, when you save FileMaker server settings out before doing a reinstall, are all settings captured?
Yeah, they all go in the database config, and then there's another file. Yeah, you can basically take the preference folder and everything inside that, actually have everything stored. So if you're moving, if you're moving from the current version 22 to 26, pretty much the machine. But if you're moving from an older version like 17 or 18 to a brand new 26, I tend to advise people to actually start from scratch, go through the settings that they have, and actually see what needs to be replicated versus what was actually done a long time ago. That actually doesn't make any more sense nowadays. So
yeah, and also to pick up the updated security defaults,
yeah,
and other settings.
Yeah.
Question: is it possible to copy a layout from one FileMaker file to another?
Yeah. You're gonna have to do all the work around making sure you have the right field names. But if the table name is the same, field names are the same, everything's the same, it copies and everything works properly. So
Yeah. Well, I think we have caught all the questions that I've seen. So thank you for joining us. If you're still here, we hope you can join us later today. This recording will be up on the Claris YouTube channel late today or first thing tomorrow, US East Coast time. So watch the community or your email next week for a link to the recording. And once again, if you want more information and a deeper dive on the remote backup and standby server features, Ryan Minook, who's the product manager for those features, will be joining me for that next Thursday. And yes, the Richard Carlton session at fmtraining.tv is about just under 4 hours from now. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, don't only come today, but pay attention to what he's got rolling for the next couple of weeks, because they're dedicating a lot of things 26. And I think you'll agree with me. I've seen a lot of releases here. I think this is a pretty significant one, and it begins to lay the foundation for our future.
Yep, and that last question: when will FileMaker 2026 be released? It's being released right now. The help web pages should be updated, and if you have a current license contract, you should get your email in the next day or two. It can take us a few days to send all of those individual emails.
And it's essentially so we don't overwhelm our servers with having everyone on the face of the earth trying to download the bits at the same time. So it takes a while to move around the globe. So within a few days, you'll be whole all the way. But I really encourage you to get your hands on this thing and start playing with it.
Yep. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.